Well, we have a celebrity in the studio today.
Thank you,
My
John.
good friend Frank Perko is in town to play a recital. And Frank, it's just great to have you here.
Thank you, John. Thanks for
Uh,
having me.
yes, you're doing a very interesting program which includes my toccata and boogie, but that's not what makes it interesting. You're redefining the organ repertoire and really uh, by your radical use of the organ. Maybe
Yes.
you could tell us about that.
Uh, the world of the organ always somehow in our minds, and we have some recollection of this even in historical discussions about, the Kavaya Cole from the Romantic period, that as organists, we kind of tend to think that our instrument stops evolving and and this is the instrument and this is the way it works and this is the music it plays and and we tend to self-limit the instrument and I don't know if we self-limit the instrument out of fear, that we don't want to learn something new, or fear that we're going to lose what came before. If the organ takes too sharp a turn, are we just not going to hear Bach anymore? And history shows us that that's not what happens at all. History shows us that all of the literature of the organ just keeps growing and adds and becomes more encompassing to what comes after. And one of the things that's been noted in several writings, which are not on the top of my head right now, I'm sorry, but when the Kavaya Cole came out in the Romantic period, which is, a wild, in many ways, a wild departure from any instrument Bach saw, or any of the Baroque or Renaissance players. The instrument was voiced different. It worked different. Everything about it was different. The way it functioned, it had a whole different new way of being. And it is known that when the instrument first came, the first thing organists started doing with it, even though it was in churches, was playing opera arias and symphonic lit of the time. And it was actually considered vulgar. People thought that the instrument was vulgar. They were a lot of the pure organists. And Lefebvre-Vallée came along and was doing wild, weird stuff with it. And
It's not exactly a household word, but the Faber-Valley was an important organist. People can find this in the details of this, by the way, in Ron Smith's excellent book on Louis Vierne.
thank you.
It has so those people who are not content to
Hear my word. Yes.
but
Yes. Well, I think the real point is, though, is that the instrument created challenge, and it created maybe angst and fear amongst organists at the time, and it certainly didn't know what to do with it. But as we well know now, it began a whole new school of organ,
yes.
and probably the most massive output of organ music ever done in the French school. And now we regard that instrument as just monumental. We have no question that it's phenomenal and that we love it very much. And so what I feel is happening again is a replay of history. The organ is evolving again, and it may or may not retain these new digital appendages, if you will. I kind of think it will, because it just makes the organ so much more capable of so many things. And I tend to think of the organ as not anymore, and some will criticize me for this, but I don't anymore think of the organ as something that has pipes. I think of the organ as something that has multiple keyboards and a pedal board, and that you access playing an instrument through this kind of configuration, but it's not limited to just having pipes.
So you're a musician first and an organist second.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate now. That would have scared me to say that years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it would have bothered me.
Yeah.
It would have really made me feel like, oh God, I'm not going to be taken seriously if I don't just say, no, I'm an organist. But
Oh, no. Yeah, David Craighead, my teacher, used to say that he hopes that we were in service of music,
right.
and that's what you're talking about.
Yes. Actually, Hector Oliveira has
Yes.
he does lots of similar things what I do. He does it in a different way, but nonetheless,
Oh yes.
he does it, and he does it very well.
We interviewed him for Organ Power Pizza in San Diego,
Oh yeah.
and where I was the classical coach for the theater organist.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I've never seen that instrument. I really want to see that one actually.
Yeah.
But
Well,
he has said, I was going to say, Hector has said, it's about the music.
yes.
It's not about the medium, it's about the music. And I believe that that's kind of what I have finally given way to in the organ is if I can make great music, and if it's not coming from a bourdon or a principal, that's okay, as long as it's
Yes.
great music. And so I think we're in a point of evolution, and I don't think it's weird or coincidental. I think it's at a time when the church with a capital C is going through an evolution and a struggle time. And so why not this monumental piece of every church building not also have to, cocoon and come out a new butterfly the same?
Well, I see you're playing my piece, Toccata in Boogie.
Yes.
The first person I know of to play this toccata from American Suite.
Well, it's very awesome, and let me tell you how it found its way into the program too. The program starts with Night on Bald Mountain, which is out and out orchestral and sounds orchestral, and then I play César Franck's Chorale in A minor, which has very toccata-like elements in spots of the music.
Starts off with
Right, with it,
yes.
and so it kind of has those elements, and it's a grand piece, ending, of course, in A minor, or A major actually on the A major chord. But the point was, well, how do I get now out of this kind of, because I wanted to get to Porter Heap's and Lloyd Nolan's toccata, which is very tongue-in-cheek, almost humorous. I mean, it had very light and fluffy piece, and I thought, how am I going to get from Franck to this other piece, which is literally humorous? And your Toccata and Boogie, I had remembered, has a sense of legitimacy in traditional organ scoring, yet fun, and a bit of that poking at just a little bit of maybe outside the envelope with a little bit of fun and a little smile that we don't typically think about with organ music. And so I thought, well, that's a great transition piece because it'll have seriousness and clout about serious organ music, and yet it'll start to push us out of thinking that the organ can't do wild and maybe funny things even. So there was kind of a thread in, packaging this so that the listener hears the organ at the very beginning doing orchestral music, classic orchestral music, but yet nonetheless not organ music, and taking the listener through very legitimate music and maybe some even humor in just the first half alone.
We have the concert this St. Patrick's Day
Yes.
at First Plymouth Congregational Church, 7:30 p.m. free, and the suggested offering is $10.
Yes.
And thanks to my colleague and friend Taylor Marvin behind the glass here, and and we have music for a while. Shall all our cares beguile.